Hey everyone, it's Chay on the mic. We're going beyond politics. Hope you're psyched. Not just policies, not just plans. We're talking dreams, hobbies, and life's other strands. We'll meet the leaders behind the scenes, uncover the stories in between, the laughs, the quirks, the passions they hide, their personal moments, unfiltered and wide. Ready or not, let's get underway. This is Beyond Politics with Chay. Hi, it's Chay. Welcome back. You're with the Oz Arab Media team. We're here with another episode of Beyond Politics with Chay, where we delve deep into the lives and personalities of some of our favorite elected leaders. Today, I'm joined by Elizabeth Lee. Elizabeth is the state member for Kurrajong, a seat within the ACT. She's a proud Liberal and an advocate for women's rights. Korean Australian Elizabeth is driving hard conversations on integrity and accountability within government and brings both her personal insights and political strength to the conversation. Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's really great to join you today, Chay. I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you. Okay, now that the intro is out of the way, let's get into my favorite part, getting our leaders on and off their script, starting with, what is one thing that people don't know about you?
Yeah, that's a really tricky one because I've lived in the public eye for quite some time now, but probably the fact that I can be quite sensitive. I think there is a tendency for women leaders, especially in politics, to sort of have this, public image that, that they've got really thick skin. And I think most people probably don't realise that there are more times than not that if there has been something that has been really upsetting, I can go home and have a bit of a cry.
I think we've all been there. Thank you for that honesty and obviously badge of honor for you, harnessing your strength as a woman, which I believe we should be unapologetic about. So Next question, what is one common compliment you receive all the time?
Yeah, that's also a tricky one. And the more time that I've spent in public, I think the one that really sticks out to me is when people say, you really represent Canberra, like you are Canberra. And as an elected member who obviously is a voice for Canberrans and the broader community here in Canberra, that's really important. And so that's something that I really do feel very proud of.
Great. Thank you for sharing. Okay, a more creative question now. If you could introduce one feature to an iPhone or smartphone, what would that be and why?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about this and going, if I could get the smartphone somehow to make sure that my kids listen to me the first time that I ask them to do something, that would be amazing. But being more realistic, I'd say probably filtering out even before I receive them, either nasty comments on social media. I know that obviously there's technology that sort of does try and do that, but being in the political eye, sometimes you do come across your fair share, and sometimes I think it's better not to see it at all, whether, even if you're just going to be deleting them.
Interesting. Yes, a bit of parental control and online moderator. So with tips, hopefully they make their way through the ecosystem of technology, I'm sure. Let's look into your childhood now, where you grew up. Share with us your personal journey.
I was born in Korea and I actually migrated to Australia, and my parents settled in Western Sydney, and that was in 1986. And in the 80s, especially in Western Sydney, there probably weren't many people that looked like me. I was 7 and I was in the middle of year 1, and I attended the local public school where there were a lot of kids who were blonde, blue-eyed, ate Vegemite sandwiches for lunch. And here I was, this odd-looking Asian kid who would bring, the homemade kimbap, which is like the Korean sushi that mum would pack for me. And, it was an interesting childhood. And I do remember the kindness of neighbours who would introduce us to cultural differences. Like, for example, the fact that we had never celebrated Christmas in summer. They invited us to a pool party and we were like, but it's Christmas, how are we actually swimming? Things like that. So I think, I look back and it was a really different time. 80s in Australia, in a very suburban neighbourhood, was incredibly different to what Australia is today, and particularly, my life in Canberra. But I have really, really fond memories of growing up in Western Sydney.
Thank you for sharing. What I would have done to be in that lunchbox, I think, a big fan of Korean food, so I'm sure things are changing now.
Definitely.
What about your motivation for entering politics? So was there a story, a particular event that triggered that, look, I think I want to go down this path?
Yeah. When I was a child, and my parents obviously had migrated, and so English was not, very, very good for them. And even now, because when you migrate as a grown adult, it's very difficult to actually focus on learning English, especially to become as good as a native speaker. And I do remember following my dad to a number of different places with him, because even though I was 7 or 8 or 9, my English was still better than my dad's English, so I'd follow him to the bank or to the insurance company or places like that. And I think that really instilled in me from a young age the importance of accessibility, especially when it comes to engaging with government services. And the fact that my parents, through absolutely no fault of their own, didn't quite have the same opportunities and access that other people did. And that, I think, really deep down instilled in me the importance of making sure that there is a voice for those who might not be able to do it for themselves. And so when I was going through schooling, and I pursued a career in law at first, and for me that was a really, really big career about being an advocate, a communicator, being the person who's able to provide access to justice, especially for those who are not in a position to do it for themselves. And that eventually got me into politics, because I was heavily involved with the Law Society, and being an advocate for and being a representative of the legal profession was something that I really enjoyed, something that I really thought was worthwhile, and something that I thought I was good at. And I thought, how do I do this on a broader scale, not just the legal profession, but for the community as a whole, and that's what got me into politics.
A great insight into your personal and your professional journey. I know many of our state and federal members have previously been lawyers, so it's good insight, and you spoke more about having and driving that change on a wider scale. So that's an interesting takeaway as well. Let's get into our policy focused discussion, and then we'll jump to more creative questions such as the passion segment and the rapid fire section.
Sure.
So you are a leading voice right now, driving a harder line on increasing integrity and accountability within government. Let's unpack what that all means and why it's important. So you sit on the committee that literally holds power to account. What does that mean? And when was the last time something came across your desk, and shocked you?
So in the ACT, we've had one party that has been the governing party for over 20 years. Now, no matter how good a government is, there does come a time where it becomes stale. And Canberra being, the small population that it is, there are a lot of people who will sort of, look at things and go, but everybody knows everybody. It's like 2 degrees of separation. And, as much as there may be processes in place to ensure that conflicts are dealt with, and even perceptions of conflicts are dealt with, it can be a challenge, especially when there are many, many people who have engaged with a government at various times in their lives. A couple of years ago, I was sort of behind breaking the pretty scandalous issue at the time, which was millions of dollars worth of contracts that had been going to one contractor for, I suppose, what people sort of saw as dubious services. So we're talking about millions of taxpayer dollars that have gone to contracts that most people could see were questionable in terms of value for money. And that ended up actually before the Integrity Commission, which was a newly established body. And there was an interim report that was released last year, which had pretty scathing findings in relation to those contracts, and they ended up being cancelled. So that was something that was quite big at the time, because the Integrity Commission in the ACT is a relatively new body. And so it's only been in operation for a few years. And of course, with any corruption type matters, they do take a long time to investigate and have all the public hearings and go through all the natural justice processes as well. So there has been some, exposure in relation to some of these concerning issues. But I think on the whole, there has been a bit of frustration about the time that some of these issues have taken to come to light. And of course, that has raised a lot of questions in relation to, is it fit for purpose? Is it achieving what it's meant to do? Does it have a resourcing issue? Are there any legislative barriers that are in the way of allowing the Commission to do its full task? And in terms of the committee that is the Oversight Committee in the Assembly, and it's important because it does play the role of asking the right types of questions and making sure that the public is aware of where the Commission is up to. Not to get involved in the substance of the matter, because it's not a litigation type committee, but it's to ensure that the Commission is functioning to its full capacity and to its best ability.
You've unpacked quite a lot there, and it's plays a critical role in ensuring that there is integrity within government processes. Mm-hmm. And you touched on a few things. Talk to us. Obviously, it was huge, an important contract that you discovered, right? What was the first thing that came to mind when, that came across your desk? What were some of your thoughts?
There was obviously question marks in relation to, because, we're a pretty small jurisdiction, and you sort of look at the sheer volume in terms of the number of contracts, but also the amount that was being spent on these contracts. And I think it did raise questions, because you look at the contracts, and of course, government contracts which are worth a certain amount, there is a threshold figure, they're all published. And so, you get to see as a taxpayer, my dollars are being spent on these types of contracts. Are they good value for money? And there were some very, very odd aspects to the terms of the contract, which did make me question more and delve a little bit further into it. And that obviously was something that I thought should be made public, and it was. And it transpired that much of the community agreed that it was not something that would be kosher, that it needed to be looked at further. And of course, the Integrity Commission's investigation into it took place, and the interim report was released. Now, there is still some more investigations happening underway, so that will obviously come to light over the next couple of months. But there has also been some frustration amongst the community about the length of time that some of these investigations have taken, and that's why it's so important to have an oversight committee that is able to look at the governance and the working arrangements of the Commission to ensure that it is doing what the community expects.
Thank you for going into that greater level of detail. You've touched on this already in your response, but if you could share with us and our viewers, what are common red flags for you that you see in this role especially? Can you talk us through these in a little bit more detail, please?
Yeah, there are various types of, I suppose, potential conflicts that exist, and there are mechanisms in place to ensure that those conflicts are dealt with. Now, this is not to say that just because you know somebody that is going to be on the other end of that working relationship, that in itself is a conflict, but it is important to have transparency around the process in terms of how decisions are made. And when it comes to dealing with taxpayer money, I think that the transparency and the accountability is even higher, because you are responsible, of course, back to the community about how you spend their hard-earned money. And whilst we do have processes in place through Parliament and through the committee process in Parliament, it can be quite opaque in the sense that it's not very accessible to the average person. Most Canberrans, of course, especially now with the cost of living crisis happening, are of course focused on what they need to do to make sure that their family is looked after, and might not necessarily have at the forefront of their mind what might be happening with government contracts. So it is important that we find that balance of making sure that we hold the government to account and ensure that taxpayer money is being spent wisely, but at the same time remaining relevant and resonating with the community about their immediate concerns as well.
Topical issue and very important and close to the heart of many voters. So in terms of the Integrity Commission, who keeps it in check? How do we hold the Integrity Commission to account as well?
Yeah, so we've got an oversight committee within the Parliament, so that's answerable to the Parliament, and committees within Parliaments are fairly robust. They've got a makeup of various members from different parties, so it's not just sort of controlled by one party or another. And in terms of the powers that a committee has, they're fairly broad, including the power to call witnesses, hold public hearings, obviously make decisions and publish reports and the like. And when you do the public hearings, they're recorded, they're available. People can come in and actually watch the proceedings. So they are pretty powerful positions in that regard. But at the same time, it does require the work of various members from various different political parties as well to come together and make sure that they are putting forward their duty to Parliament first and foremost, as opposed to making it political.
A very exciting part of being part of the Commission. Elizabeth, thank you for sharing that insight. So if the Commission, let's break it down even further, was a team, who would be responsible for writing its job description?
Well, I suppose ultimately it's Parliament because we established and passed the piece of legislation that established the Commission itself. It's also important to note that the Commission, there is also an inspectorate role as well that oversees the Commission as well. So there are some checks and balances in addition to Parliament in place as well. Because of course you need to have sort of that, Caesar judging Caesar type of thing. So you've got to make sure that there is somebody who's also overseeing the Commission itself. So with that, there's also, of course, an annual report that the Commission publishes and tables each year that does provide information about how many cases they have looked at and, what are the outcomes, what does the Commission personnel look like, all of those things. But ultimately, I suppose, in terms of who writes the job description, that would be the community through the Parliament, through the members who actually do debate the legislation.
Thank you. Very detailed insight and a great breakdown of the very important role the Commission is playing right now. If you were to share with us then the top concerns that you think the public has right now, what would they be and what is the Commission doing about it?
I think that, in terms of for most people, they want to know that their elected representatives have their best interest at heart, and they're going to be making laws that are fair, that are transparent, and that are going to make their lives better, I think, ultimately. In terms of specifically when it comes to integrity issues, I think that most people will be outraged if taxpayer dollars are being spent in a way that doesn't pass the pub test, that are being spent in a way that will benefit a certain individual or individuals or a company or whatever it might be. I think they'll be concerned about their taxpayer dollars being wasted when we have a pretty serious budget, situation at the moment. We do have a significant debt load in the ACT. And, so I think most people will be concerned if their hard-earned taxpayer dollars aren't going to essential government services like health, like education, like public transport, and instead has been wasted. So I think that will be the biggest concern that people would have when it comes to the integrity stuff.
Thank you for leading this change within the ACT, and I'm sure it will make its way through other jurisdictions, Elizabeth, and giving us and our viewers that very important breakdown. So I know it's a lot to take in. So let's jump back into your personal journey, starting with what is one passion or talent that you harbor that would surprise people if they knew?
Yeah, so obviously coming from a law background and then going into politics, I think most people probably think probably pretty straight-laced, But I do tend to love to have a dance. And in fact, before I was elected, I was actually a group fitness instructor, and one of my classes that I used to teach was a dance-based aerobics class. So I still do love my dancing, and I still will get up and do one when the mood strikes. And so I suppose in a way, call it that, a little passion or a hidden talent.
Or a bit of both, actually. Love to see that happen in Parliament. For real. Let's see. Let's keep that on the watch. Okay. Rapid fire segment. 5 questions, very quick questions. First thing that comes to mind. Starting with, what is your favorite film and why?
Okay, not quite a movie, but it's a BBC version of Pride and Prejudice.
Nice. Why?
Oh, I just love it. I think it was the combination of the capturing of the incredibly rich characters that were already written by Jane Austen, at the same time as that cinematography in terms of showcasing the best of the country of England, and of course it's just a fabulous story, and it's. The book itself actually holds a dear place in my heart back from high school when I first studied it. So
there's been a few takes on that, and something that I cherish as well, Bride and Prejudice. Not sure if you've seen the Bollywood.
Ah, yes, I've seen that one too. There's an Australian actor in it, I think, who played the Colin Firth character.
Definitely. Okay, now favorite song.
Okay, so I don't know if it's favorite, but at the moment, the one that's on repeat at the moment on my Spotify is Apatu by Blackpink's Rosé featuring Bruno Mars. And it's obviously a Korean, like a K-pop girl band. But my kids, who are almost 6 and 2, they love it. They love it. So it's on repeat in the car all the time. And even my 2-year-old is like, Mama, Apatu song. So it is very catchy. It is very, very catchy.
Beautiful. Okay. Favorite meal?
Oh, goodness me, that is a really hard one. And I have to say that it's this it's a specific beef stew that my mum makes, and it's very hard to get. And even if you buy it in the in the restaurants, it's not the same. But it is a bit of a spicy beef stew that my mum makes, and I think she does a fantastic job. So I can't go past that.
Would love to try a bowl if I'm ever in town, so I won't be shy. Okay, and if you can name a favorite restaurant, whether that be in Canberra, around the world, even in Western Sydney.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, hard to say because there are so many good ones in Canberra. I know people probably don't believe it, but the restaurant scene in Canberra has really taken off in the last couple of years, and there's a really a big variety of great ones to choose from. I do have to say that I have always had a great meal at Raku, which is sort of the Japanese fine dining restaurant in the city. And in terms of sort of my go-to cafe, I do spend a lot of time in Manuka and Deakin, so there's a number of cafes there that I frequent quite a lot.
That's good to know. Last book you've read?
Oh, I'm in the middle of, and I always am in the middle of several books. One of them at the moment is How to Raise Girls That Like Themselves. I know it's a parenting self-help book, but I think at the moment when you're raising, 6-year-old and 2-year-old, it's probably important to make sure that you keep on top of. I'm also in the middle of reading Ruth Bader Ginsburg's, sort of biography in her own words. I think that's very interesting at the moment, and goes into a bit of an insight into somebody who obviously at the time incredibly brilliant, faced so much adversity, and how she got through that. And the other one that I'm reading, and I have to say I have to keep rereading because it is very dense in the sense that it deals with really hard topics, but written in a really beautiful way. And that's Stephen Hawking's The Brief Answers to the Big Questions, and covers everything from is there a God through to, all of the physics stuff. And so that's been fascinating. So I'm in the middle of all 3 of those because depending on the mood.
Very deep topics. Thanks for sharing, and thanks for those insights as well. If there was one piece of life advice or a personal mantra that you'd like to share now with our audience, what would that be?
Don't put your eggs in one basket. And by that, I mean, I think back to the lead up to the ACT election where I was leader, and it was an incredibly important job for me. My family sacrificed a lot so that I could do what I needed to do to give our party the best chance to win government last year. And, having 2 very, very young children, juggling all of that whilst being leader of a major party and in an election year was incredibly difficult and challenging and all consuming. And even though it was all consuming, one of the things that I really tried to do was to remind myself that my role or my position or my title doesn't define me as a person, and it doesn't define my successes or failures. And the reason that I think that's so important is because if you do define yourself in that way, if that doesn't actually pan out the way you had planned and hoped and worked toward, it can have a massive, massive negative impact on your mental health, on your outlook. And it's really important to value you for you in that intrinsic way, as opposed to a position or a title or what your job might be. And that's something that I really want to be able to articulate to my girls, especially in this day and age where there is so much that can tear them down and bring them down, that they should value themselves for the person that they are, and that there is nothing, no one thing that will define them, their success or their failure, or the kind of person they are.
A wealth of advice. Thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you for joining me today on an episode of Beyond Politics with Chay. I'm going to leave our viewers with you now. If you could share the best way for them to get in contact with you, and we'll close out with that. Thank you, Elizabeth. And for everybody watching, please don't forget to like and share this episode. Thank you for tuning in. And don't forget, we're only a message away here at Oz Arab Media. Elizabeth, over to you.
Thank you, Chay, and it's been an incredible conversation. I've had a lot of fun, and it's been different to some of the political interviews that I do. So thank you for making it really enjoyable. So I'm Elizabeth Lee. I'm the Liberal member for Kurrajong here in the Australian Capital Territory in the ACT Legislative Assembly, and I live in the beautiful Canberra, which is the capital of Australia. And the best way to get in contact with me is by email, which is Lee, so LEE, at parliament.act.gov.au. And I really look forward to hearing from you. Thank you so much.